Hello, everyone. Welcome. This is Nick from Top Notch Sports. This is the current state of the Minnesota Vikings. The Vikings were 13-4 in the 2022 NFL season. They ultimately finished first in the NFC North, but would disappointingly lose in the wild card round to the New York Giants by a score of 31-24. In 2023, this team tried to make another step forward in the right direction. Kirk Cousins is back. Justin Jefferson's back. Hockenson is back. They did lose Dalvin Cook, but ultimately they brought in another piece in Jordan Addison in the draft. And Jordan Addison has been a really good piece for this team and will be a good piece in the future. But the run game really never got going. And this offense, as potent as it was supposed to look early on in the season with Justin Jefferson, they went on a huge losing streak. Can this team turn around and somehow make the playoffs with quarterback Josh Dobbs since Kirk Cousins got hurt earlier this season? Or will it continue to go downward and we'll have to look forward to the 2024 NFL season? This is the current state of the Minnesota Vikings. Currently, the Vikings are 6-6. And there are 5 games remaining. Now, looking at their schedule again, as I mentioned before, they were on a 3-game losing streak to start the season with Jefferson, with Cousins, with Jordan Addison, with TJ Hockenson, etc., etc. So, that's not good. If they were to pull one of those games, maybe the game against the Buccaneers, maybe the game against the Chargers, maybe both of those games, they would be in a great spot right now. But losing those 2 or 3 games early on this season really, really hurt this team. They'd ultimately win. So they were like, all right, maybe they can turn around. Then they would lose again to the Chiefs, which again, the Chiefs were understandable, okay? But losing to the Chargers and the Buccaneers, Chargers are a good team on paper, but Brandon Staley's made that team look like a pile of dog poop the entire season. And Tampa Bay, that was a game that you should have won. That was a game you should have won week 1. I know there's some woes week 1 and things happen, but ultimately that was a game that you guys should have won. You look at your win streak here that you had. So you started off the season 1-4. Not a good start. Very hard. We made a video. It was hard to, be very hard for this team to climb out of that hole. And here we are now. You kind of helped yourselves here, but then losing Kirk Cousins really is going to hurt you guys. So you beat Chicago. You beat San Francisco, which is a phenomenal win. I don't understand you'll lose to Tampa, but then somehow you end up beating San Fran. You beat Green Bay. You beat Atlanta. You beat New Orleans. So there is somewhere that you could say that most of their wins has been against really bad teams, okay? And Carolina is a really bad team. Chicago is a very bad team, in my opinion, at least. Maybe you disagree. I mean, they're adding pieces now, right? They're adding pieces with Montez Sweat and stuff like that. But let's just be honest. The team isn't really where they got to be just yet. You keep going down. Green Bay, they're a young upcoming team, right? They might be good in a year or two, and they may make the playoffs this year. But again, not a great team. You beat Atlanta, no offense, good defense. They're gonna run the ball. Still, these are still quality wins, right? Beating Green Bay and beating Atlanta, quality wins. Beating Chicago, even a quality win. And then the New Orleans Saints, we knew how that game went. Just ugliness for the New Orleans Saints. The Vikings, you guys stepped all over their throats. So look, they're quality wins. I think the Saints are a pretty dang good football team, but they've just been struggling. Atlanta, pretty solid team, just got really no quarterback and no passing game right now. Green Bay, young and upcoming team, but they're still a tough team. In Chicago, they're growing to try to become something. I don't know if they ever will be, but they're trying. And again, you won. So you're beating some teams that are tough teams to beat, but again, they're the bottom, third of the league. The Saints are a team, honestly, in my opinion, that are, top 10, top 12 team if they can get their shit together, okay, which they have not been able to do lately. The one game here, though, that, again, you can throw all those things out, you're only beating below average teams. And again, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that these are what some people are saying. San Fran. This San Francisco win, oh, my God. Tell me that didn't spark something, because then you went on a little bit of a tear here, winning the next 3. And again, the thing that stinks for you guys more than anything is that you don't have Cousins anymore. And Jefferson's finally coming back. And, if you had Cousins, you probably end up beating Denver or Chicago. And then you're going to have Justin Jefferson back to go on this little run down the stretch here. But with Josh Dobbs, he's been phenomenal so far this year. but coming off a 4-interception performance, which I know a lot of those interceptions were not his fault. And I feel like, Dobbs is going to work his magic some more going down the stretch here. But it's going to be tough to ask this career backup to go on in these final 5 games of the season and ultimately win at least 3 to give you a chance to be at 9-8, and 4 of the next 5 to put you in a good spot at 10-7 or better if you ultimately win out, which, again, very tough to do with looking at your schedule. All right, let's keep this going, moving forward. We're going to look at your depth chart now. Here's your depth chart, all right? Let's take a quick look. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. Right now, you guys have $9.648 million to spend if you wanted to spend on something right now. If you need to bring somebody in right now, emergency situation, you could use this money to bring somebody in, okay? But now let's look at the team without that money, okay? Jefferson's finally coming off the IR, okay? So he was on the IR. You're going to be activating him very shortly. He'll be back in the lineup. So you have Addison, Jefferson, KJ Osborne, TJ Hawkinson. We know what this can do. We know what Hawkinson, Osborne, and Jefferson were able to do. Now you add in Jordan Addison, and it's only going to go up from there. The issue is that the one piece that wasn't there previously last season and, every other season was Josh Dobbs. Okay, and look, Dobbs has shown signs, flashes of really good football. He shows signs of, being a really good quarterback and being able to elevate this team to levels that maybe even someone like Kirk Cousins wasn't able to because of Dobbs' mobility, right? He's able to move around in the pocket and even run a little bit for this team, which is going to open up the offense in some other ways. But Dobbs is not as accurate as Kirk Cousins. Dobbs is not fully bought into this offense yet, right? He's only been here for a few weeks. It takes years to learn an offense, coming from me, who's an offensive coordinator, okay? Takes at least a year to really fully understand it. And then, by year 2, you should be able to fully implement what you want. Dobbs is doing it on a few weeks. I mean, Cousins is looking good this year, but the issue is now he's on the IR. So you look at this team as a whole. I mean, again, the offensive line is pretty solid, in my opinion. I mean, a lot of decent names here. Darsal, Risner, Garrett Bradbury, Ed Ingram, and Brian O'Neill. I mean, that's a pretty solid front. At least guys that there's some teams you're like, who the hell is their left tackle? This is a offensive line that everybody here. You know who these guys are. They're big name guys. Ed Ingram, coming out of the draft, everyone knew who this guy was. Dalton Risner, another guy, solid guy too. So all the way across the board, even the 3 guys I didn't mention, Bradbury, Darsal, and O'Neill, that may honestly be, your most impactful guys right there. And that, they are the difference maker between you winning and losing games, your 2 offensive tackles and your center ultimately. So that's where you're at there. Your offensive line, your offense as a whole looks pretty good besides your running back room. Chandler's someone that I'm really liking when I watch him. Whenever he touches a ball, he seems very explosive. You guys would know that better than I would. But Madison, there's been too many fumbles, let's put it that way, by him. And just not everyone was like, oh, this guy's going to be great when Cook is gone. He's been great as the number 2. And, by committee, Madison's always been able to get it done. Alexander Madison's no Dalvin Cook. Okay, that's just a fact. And I'm tired of fans always doing that, no matter whether you're an NFL fan and fantasy. Oh, yeah, well, he's putting up good numbers. And then, even if you're a Vikings fan, oh, well, Alexander Madison, he's the best guy in the world. He outdoes Cook on a, given basis, on a touch per touch basis. I don't care. He wasn't the workhorse like Dalvin Cook was. So, of course, he's going to look good in his limited role. And he's going to be able to pop some big runs when he's coming out with fresh legs. So, that's just the nature of the business. Here we are, looking at the defense. Harrison Phillips has been here for years, solid guy locking down the middle. Jacqueline Roy, Jonathan Bullard, 2 guys interior. It is what it is. I mean, look, again, you're not spending a lot of money on this defense. Danielle Hunter takes a lot of money, right? And he's pretty dang good. Ivan Pace Jr. was a good draft pick. I remember scouting Troy Dye coming out of college a few years ago. All right. Byron Murphy, Caleb Evans, Corey Ballantine, you got Cameron Bynum, and Harrison Smith locking down that secondary. Harrison Smith, another big name, right? So your 2 big names on this defense, Danielle Hunter, Harrison Smith. And then you got someone like Harrison Phillips, just an old vet right here, doing his job as he's been doing for the last 10 years now. Ivan Pace Jr., Troy Dye, a little bit of fresh blood in that linebacking core, okay? And again, you got corners that are trying to prove themselves every single week. Caleb Evans, Byron Murphy, continuing to try to do everything they can do to keep this team in football games on the defense side of the ball. Sometimes they succeed, Sometimes they fail. Okay. It's just the nature of the business. When you're spending a lot of money on offense, Jefferson, Cousins, Hawkinson, right? Some of these offensive linemen, okay? And then you're also paying Danielle Hunter, okay, and Harrison Smith a decent amount of money. Yeah, you're going to have some spots that are not going to look beautiful. Your linebacking core right now, very young, not really, not very experienced. Your cornerback room, still up and coming, we can say, okay? Caleb Evans and Byron Murphy, two younger guys that are still trying to prove themselves. Not a household name yet, either of them in the NFL. So trying to slowly develop into a cornerstone, whether it's on this team or another team. Guys, it takes years, especially as a secondary player, a defensive back, corner, it takes years to develop into a player. And whether or not this is a team that they're going to do it on is a different story. And again, here's another thing you got to understand too. Byron Murphy, 25 years old, okay? Still very young, very young. And a Caleb Evans, only 24 years old. Okay, so two young corners. Maybe you address it in next year's draft. The cornerback spot if you don't really like what you got there. But ultimately, two young guys still up and coming. Let me know what you think in the comments below about those two. So again, as a whole, there's going to be some pieces on this team that aren't going to be great. Again, your defensive end spots. In this 3-4 system, your two DNs, Roy and Ballard. Not household names. Cornerback rooms, not household names. And ultimately this offense, besides the running back spot, pretty damn good. So next year, you're trying to grow this team. I know Cousins becomes a free agent next year. Maybe you bring him back, maybe you don't. But at least two positions that you should probably look at is the defensive end, that defensive line, shore that up. Hopefully Dye and Pace Jr. will maybe continue to be, good young pieces and develop. I would maybe rock and roll again with Murphy and Evans. That's up to you guys. Let me know what you think in the comment section, though. If not, maybe you spend a draft pick, maybe there at corner. And ultimately, on the offensive side of the ball, running back, and maybe you move on from Cousins if you don't give him a new contract. If you do, you got to draft one probably. If you don't, and you bring him back, the team looks pretty damn good still. Pretty damn good. So let's keep this thing pushing here. The current record is 6-6. According to our top-notch sports analytical tool created by Noah Thompson, our statistics guy on the channel, he believes with the numbers that he crunches in on this model, not him, but the model that he created, I should say, crunches in a bunch of stats and analytics, and comes up with this interpretation of how the team's going to perform. There are 0 favorable games according to the model. There are 2 unfavorable games, and there are 3 toss-up games. So you're going to hear our expert and analyst prediction, and then you're going to hear at the very end of the video what our model believes this team's going to do. So here's what our model believes. 0 favorable, 3 toss-up, 2 unfavorable games going into the final 5 games. So at 6-6, there are 0 favorable games. Okay, as we mentioned again, 0 remaining. Those final 5, 0 remaining favorable games. Don't really like to see that. Your current record is 6-6. There are 2 unfavorable games. Our analytical tool believes they are the game against Detroit at home and the game at Detroit in Detroit. So, again, look, Detroit's a tough team this year. Could you ultimately steal one of these unfavorable games? Sure, you could. It's just going to be unfavorable. So, again, if you really want to have a good shot at the playoffs this year, you're going to probably have to try to steal one of these games or at least try to win out. Your current record is 6-6. There are 3 toss-up games. These games are defined as the game against Las Vegas, game against Cincinnati, and game against Green Bay. Okay, so these 3 toss-up games are another 3 games that are really going to decide your season. If you win these 3 games, you pull all the toss-up games, you're sitting at 9 wins, 9-8, you have a shot at making the playoffs. You're able to pull these 3 in one of the unfavorable games, you're sitting at 10 wins. You have a good shot at making the playoffs. You drop one of these games, you're probably done. You're probably done. Okay? It's just the truth of the situation. So that's what we're looking at right now. Going forward, these 3 games are vital games for the Vikings. So now, let's take a look at what we got. All right, so here we are predicting the next 3 games with 2 games left on the schedule. We have it being this way, and your predicted record is at 6-7 with two too close to call games. The game against Las Vegas right now is too close to call. We're not going to make that prediction just yet. We'll do it at the end of the video. The game against Cincinnati at Cincinnati is too close to call. We're not going to call that one just yet. We'll wait for the end of the video. Again, these two games could be make or breaks for you going in, to the end of the season. I mean, these are games that you got to win. And right now, it's just too close to call. With Josh Dobbs and maybe Jaron Hall starting against Las Vegas, we don't really know the situation right there right now. We don't want to come out and make an ignorant decision right now, this second. The game against Cincinnati is loaded with playmakers as well. Jake Browning has to give you a little bit of confidence in the Vikings winning that game because, again, he's not Joe Burrow, and I think Josh Dobbs is better than Jake Browning and Jaron Hall. So if Hall is a starter, I don't like your chances. If Josh Dobbs remains your starter, I like your chances to pull in some of these games. So with 2 games left, we're 6-7, 2 games undecided right now. They're both question marks. Let's go down to the final 2 games. The final 2 games, here's what we got. With 0 games remaining, we have you too close to call against the Packers and a loss against the Lions. So that puts you at 6-8 with 3 too close to call games remaining in the season. We're going to try to figure those ones out. We're going to see what we think here. Will you ultimately be able to win any of these too close to call games? Will you lose out? Or will you pull out all 3? So again, will you win all 3? If you win all 3, you're at 9-8. If you win 2, you're at 8-9, probably out. If you win 1, 7-10 is not that great. And 6-11, you're probably crying. So, but hey, good draft pick. Let's see what we believe. All right, and here we go. Our last slide, predicting the final games. With 0 games remaining, we have you finishing the year with a 8-9 record. 8-9. We have you ultimately winning against the Las Vegas Raiders, losing against Cincinnati, winning against Green Bay, winning against Las Vegas, losing against Cincinnati, and winning against Green Bay. And here's our reasoning why. The Raiders game is going to be a tough one in Las Vegas, but Josh Dobbs is better than Aiden O'Connell. If Jefferson and Addison are back, that's a better combination than Jacoby Myers and Devontae Adams. Hawkinson is better than Michael Mayer. And all around, I think the defense is just up there with Las Vegas's. So we feel like that's going to be a win. And the Raiders are not able to stop mobile quarterbacks usually. The Bengals game, we got as a loss. This is a game that could go either way. The only reason we ultimately went loss is because it's in Cincinnati. And I don't know how much of a home field advantage that's really going to be. It's not like you're a warm weather player, warm weather team playing in cold weather or anything. You're a cold weather team playing in cold weather. So the only thing is that the Bengals fans are going to be screaming. And, we'll see. Josh Dobbs can very well win that game. If he wins that game, it flips the entire script. You guys have a good shot at, potentially trying to maybe make the wild card. But we have that one as a loss right now because it's in Cincinnati. And last but not least, Green Bay in Minnesota versus a young team, Jordan Love, Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs, Jaden Reed, et cetera, et cetera. You guys are a veteran team, a lot of veterans on your team going, in Minnesota. The Green Bay needs to come to you. You're going to win that game. The 2 games against Detroit are going to kill you. If you didn't have to play Detroit twice this year, or maybe you can win one of those games, completely flips your season. Because there is a shot that you could ultimately pull a Detroit game, maybe. I mean, if you can pull a Detroit game, I should say, and you beat Cincinnati, you're sitting at 10-7, which would be phenomenal way to end the season and punch yourselves a ticket into the playoffs. So now let's go to our final slide. Our predicted record is 8-9. Our analytical tool says your absolute floor is 6-11 if all shit hits the fan. It believes that you're likely going to go 8-9. It actually agrees with this, which does not happen often. So if you want to tune into our other videos and see how often it disagrees, you're more than welcome to check that out. And it says your ceiling is 9-8. So again, it's saying that you can maybe pull a Detroit game or pull that Cincinnati game, but ultimately you're not going to pull 2 and get to 10-7. Saying your absolute ceiling, if everything goes well, according to our tool, is 9-8. So, sorry, we got one more slide. So here it is. Let's wrap this thing up. Your current record is 6-6. We have you going 2-3 in the final 5, ultimately finishing with a record of 8-9. So here's our final prediction. The Minnesota Vikings will finish the year going 8-9, finishing 3rd in the NFC North. missing the playoffs this year with their losses of Jefferson for half the season and Kirk Cousins. It did not make this 2023 season very easy, but we saw a lot of fight, which brings a lot of hope going into the 2024 NFL season. One more time, our final prediction is the Minnesota Vikings finished with a record of 8-9, finished third in the NFC North, missing the playoffs after a year full of adversity, losing Kirk Cousins and Justin Jefferson for half the season. Hopefully, in 2024, this team can rebound and be a Super Bowl contender many of us thought they would be this past season. This is the current state of the Minnesota Vikings. We'll see you guys soon. Peace. We are built better.
180. 180 set.
Hehehehe